Hello and welcome to the Quest for Games. I'm Jerry, and in this video we're going to go through the 1 to 4 player game Dice Thrones Adventures. So what is Dice Thrones Adventures? Dice Thrones Adventures is what we refer to as a dungeon crawl. There will be tiles that you'll lay out based on layout. You'll use the characters that we have from the other video that I did on how to play Dice Thrones. You'll have to have these character packs. So you have to have as many people as you want to play with have to have a character pack. So 4-player game, you're going to need at least 2 of the 2-player packs or a battle chest or something like that. Back to it's a dungeon crawl. So you're going to walk through rooms, flipping over tiles, doing encounters in the rooms, and trying to find 3 shards. Those 3 shards, portal shards, are going to complete the portal, and then that will take you from the dungeon crawl to a boss fight. And you'll do that 4 times. This is a Kickstarter, so you may see some things that didn't come in your retail version of the game. But I'm pretty sure the only thing that I got from the Kickstarter is some promo cards. With that being said, this is a Kickstarter. I bought it. I am not being paid for this video. There's no sponsors for the video. It's just Jerry's comments and my opinions, and they don't reflect anybody else's opinions. I will turn on the Klingon sub-channel so that mistakes that I've made that people have pointed out, I can put that in there. And so if you have Klingon turned on, you'll see the closed caption of those mistakes coming up on screen. So in this video, I've found during editing, I found that it was too long to do the normal teach that I do in one video. So I've split it up into basically 3 videos. There's the first portal crawl one, then there's the boss fight, and then you'll get final thoughts. At the end of this video, you'll see some final thoughts, but I'm going to do the normal final thoughts, a longer one, as a separate video that I'm just going to title Final Thoughts. This video is the boss fight. So let's get it to the table and start to teach. Okay, welcome back. If you had stopped the video after you had set up the portal crawl and you actually went and did the portal crawl, we're now ready after the portal crawl is finished and you successfully completed it, which may have taken you a few tries. We now have to set up for scenario 2. So scenario 2 is the boss fight. After this boss fight setup, you'll see that the next portal crawl is set up exactly the same as the last portal crawl. Each card has a little bit of stuff on it that's a little different, but the basic mechanics of setting up is the same. So we finished scenario 1's portal crawl, got all the portal shards, and have combined them to open the portal. So we move on to scenario 2. So in scenario 2, you're always going to be fighting the Fallen Barbarian. I will be getting his board out and showing you how you set up his board in a minute, but I wanted to go over this setup card because similar to the scenario setup for scenario 1, this scenario setup tells you how much health the players have. But in this case, the players have a combined health, a shared health pool dial. Not each hero has their own, but there's a combined one. The boss setup tells you how much health the boss should have. For the upgrade phase, we'll talk about that in a minute, how much CP you get based on the number of players. And then they're starting normal combat points. Similar to the scenario 1 cards or the portal crawl cards, there's the conclusion upon defeat. This is what happens. Upon victory, this is what you get to do. And then the King's Hand token, it tells you how many starting tokens that the person gets based on the number of players again, maximum tokens per turn that can be used, and what the successful roll is. There's also the salve. In this case, the salve will heal 6 on the shared dial. So that's the anatomy of the boss setup card. As you go up in scenarios, portal crawl or the boss cards, the scenario cards keep the same basic structure. So let's talk about a little bit of story here before I go too much farther. There's this Mad King that is running rampant on the land, and people have been fighting him for a while. There are a number of ex-heroes that fought the Mad King and lost. Instead of dying, they chose to surrender to the Mad King, and now instead of being heroes, they're considered fallen. That's why they're the boss fight. We've got to get through these fallens. The first one we have to face is the fallen barbarian, which is some ancestor of the barbarian, depending upon what lore you want to look at. It could be the barbarian's father or grandfather or something like that. But it's an ancestor of the barbarian, which is why when you look at the fallen barbarian, you'll see that he's pretty much the exact same, looks pretty much the same as the barbarian. So as I'm setting up for the boss fight, I'll set up the Fallen Barbarian board, which was in the box. The Fallen Barbarian has their pamphlet, the same as the heroes' pamphlets. So this will be very reminiscent of setting up the hero boards for the fight. You'll see that with a 2-player game, we need to have health dial set to 70. So I set his health dial to 70. Then I need to have, for a 2-player game, for the setup part or upgrade part, I need to have 8 CP for the upgrade. So I have the CP set to 8. There's a special deck of cards for the Fallen Barbarian, and I have to separate them up, but that's the back of the cards. You have to separate this into what they refer to as an action deck, which is all of the cards that are not upgrades to the main boards, and another set of cards, which are all the upgrade cards for the main board. And so they have on the side, I don't know how well you can see that, but it says on the side right there, boss upgrade, as opposed to these cards, they just say the same as a normal fight card. This one happens to say roll phase action card in that same spot, but this is an action card. So you separate out all the upgrade cards and you shuffle the upgrade cards, and you're going to form a deck of upgrade cards. So now with that 8 CP for my upgrades, I'm going to take the Fallen Barbarian. I'm going to take the first card on the pile, which is of the upgrade deck. First one is Barbaric Roar 3. So we're going straight to 3. So that Barbaric Roar 3 will go over top of his Barbaric Roar, just like you would be upgrading your character, your hero. It costs 2 CP, so I roll the CP dial down to 6. The next one I pulled is Pain Response 3. So I put Pain Response over top of the Pain Response 3 over top of the Pain Response. That one also costs 2 CP, so I roll up, and now I have 4 CP left. Oh, now I have Pain Response 2. Well, because it's Pain Response 2, and I already put Pain Response 3 out there, I just discard that one. If that would have happened in the other order, and I would have gotten Pain Response 2 out before 3 and then 3 showed up, then I would have only had to pay, I would have paid 1 for Pain Response 2, and Pain Response 3 costs 2, so I'd only have to pay 1 more to put out Pain Response 3, and I would take Pain Response 2 off. But since it came out second, I just discard it. So the next one is Overload 3. So I put Overload 3 onto in that spot. It costs 2, so I go down 2 on this dial. The next one I pulled, the next one I pulled out is Smackdown 3. 3 goes into the Smackdown spot. I'm not sure I'd want to play this boss. And now I'm at a CP of 0. So my upgrade phase is done. With that upgrade phase being done, I now take the cards that were in the upgrade deck and I set those off to the side. I don't need them anymore. Put them back in the box, whatever. The next part of setup says that the Fallen Barbarian's starting CP is 2. So I set their combat points to 2 and put that out by the Fallen Barbarian. The Fallen Barbarian has basically the same stuff as the Barbarian. So I put 2 chips on his concussion, 1 chip on his stun, I shuffle his deck of cards and place that off to the side so that I can get to it. Then I have to look at how many King's Hand tokens does he get. So he gets, his starting token count is 2 for a 2-player game. So he gets 2 King's Hand tokens. I talked a little bit about the King's Hand tokens in the portal crawl, but I'll talk a little bit more about it here when we get into how the boss fight works. So when you finished your portal crawl, you will have had moved over the remaining salves that you had at the end of that portal crawl. We're saying 3 from the one that we were showing earlier. So those 3 go as common pool for the heroes. And with that, we're set up and ready to start. So now we're going to do the Fallen Barbarian boss battle. We have a boss battle turn order card that I have up here so that you can try to follow along a little bit. Hopefully you can see that okay. The turn order is going to go the hero and then the boss. The other hero goes and then the barbarian goes. And you keep doing that back and forth until either the common pool of 50 from the heroes is whittled down to 0 or the boss's pool is whittled down to 0. And whichever one happens first, that's the side that wins. So let's start talking about turn order. The first thing that would happen in turn order is the heroes can decide to use one of their salves to heal. And for this particular boss fight, that means they get 6 health back for using the salve to heal. Then the next thing that happens is the hero takes their normal step, their normal turn, as in normal Dice Thrones turn. So they do their upkeep, which means because he's got a passive ability, the gunslinger gets his reload. Then they do their income. So the gunslinger would get 1 combat point and be able to draw 1 card. In my first main phase, I'll show you the cards that I had in my hand that say that these are the main phase cards that I could do. So I could spend the 0 combat points and do run and gun. So I'm going to try to do that. I rolled a 5, which is dash. I didn't roll the 6, which is the bullseye, which is what this card needs. So I didn't inflict anything on the Fallen Barbarian, but this will have to go into my discard pile now. But I do get to draw an extra card because I didn't succeed. I could spend the 2 combat points and there's no status effects on him that I'd want to remove. I can't remove the King's Hand dice. So that's the end of what I would do as my first main phase. So I'm going to do my offensive roll phase. And I've rolled takedown. So takedown means I gain 1 evasion and I'm doing 5 defendable damage to the Fallen Barbarian. But I will spend my reload, which means I roll 1 dice, got a 4. I do half of that value as an attack modifier, so I do 2, so the 5 is now a 7. So I'm doing 7 defendable damage to the Fallen Barbarian. So then, just like normal, the Fallen Barbarian, which would be ran by the other player, now gets to do his defensive roll phase. So his stone skin is his defensive roll. He rolls 4 dice. He rolls 4 dice. He got 3 slashes in a vortex. That's what that's called. This is called a vortex, which I couldn't remember what it was called earlier. So it says that he heals 2 on the vortex. So on any chaos dice, which he didn't get any of those, he would deal 1 damage back to me. So I was doing 7 damage to him. So I take his dial down to 63, and then he heals back 2. So he's at 65. So that's the way the hero's turn would go. Now for the boss's turn, so they gain 1 CP, so they're now at 3. They draw a card from their action deck. And in this particular case, there's, looking at the anatomy of these cards, they're very close to the regular cards, but there's this symbol on the top left corner, and that says that the active player gets to get that bonus. So the active player is the gunslinger, so the gunslinger would draw 1 more card. So I'm supposed to try to use this card, and it gives me a role objective, similar to the role objectives that we had for the minions. The barbarian now has a role objective. He wants to roll all chaos dice, or all 6s. So I'm going to roll for the barbarian, and I want to roll all 6s. I got 1 6. I got 2 6s. No more 6s. That was my final dice roll. Well, with this card, I'm supposed to spend 2 CP, so I got to spend 2 CP to activate this card. I take the lowest 2 dice and I turn them into chaos. So that's what my roll is right now. Now I have to figure out, this card gets discarded now. And I have to figure out, what am I going to do on the for the fallen barbarian? So on the corner of each one of the squares, there's a number. This one happens to be 4. That tells you the priority. You're supposed to find the thing that you can do at the highest priority. So I have 4 chaos and 1 vortex. I could do this 2. Nope, I don't have 2 vortexes. I could, nope, I don't have the slashes. So the only one I really could do is this Skull Bash. That's the only one that matches Fallen Barbarian's dice roll. I would inflict a stun on the gunslinger, and then I would deal 6 undefendable damage to the gunslinger, or to the pool, right? Well, I do have, the gunslinger did have his evasive from what he had done earlier. So I'm going to try to roll the evasive. I rolled a 3. I needed to roll a 1 or a 2. I didn't evade it. So the common health pool will now take 6 damage and put us down to 44. So now the barbarian would take their turn normally. Barbarian would have done his bit. Let's say the barbarian did 5 damage to the fallen barbarian. The fallen barbarian would do their income phase, which would give them 1 combat point, and they would draw another card. This card happens to show a 2 here, so we would give the heroes 2 health points back because of that 2. It's happening in the main phase, and the role objective is, again, he's trying for his ultimate. So the next thing we would do is the main phase for the fallen barbarian. And this card says pay 2 CP. He has the 2 CP. So we pay the 2 CP, remove all positive status effects on the active player. So if the barbarian had any positive status effects on them, we would have removed those positive status effects. We would be rolling again for this, for his ultimate. I'm not going to do the roll, but that's what the next card looks like, right? And you continue to do that back and forth until the fallen barbarian is defeated or the player's health is at 0. I'm going to continue to keep taking their turns until we see a scenario come up. So this card costs no CP, so he's going to definitely use it. The active player would get a +1 on their damage. Whoever the active player is would get this +1 damage. And we would do this again during the roll phase. But on this one, you can see it says I'm trying to roll for a straight. So now as I'm rolling, I'm trying to get the straight, not the ultimate. So let's say that we're doing our income phase. He was at 0. I do 1 for that, and then I draw the card. In this case, for that particular card, the heroes now get another salve, so they can heal. This one's going to cost 3, and the roll objective is to get all vortexes. but it costs 3, and the combat points that the barbarian currently has is only 1. During the roll phase, the barbarian wouldn't be able to afford this. So the barbarian discards it, and by discarding it, he's basically selling it, and so his combat points now go to 2. But we would still get the salve, and the roll objective would still be the same. That's the point I'm trying to make with that, even though he couldn't use it. And then he does get his 1 combat point for selling the card. Then he would take his turn normally. So let's try to take that turn. He's trying to roll 5 vortexes. So I'll go roll. That's 1 roll. There's 2 rolls. I'm keeping the vortex because that's what he's trying to do. So at the end of my dice roll, I have 2 vortexes, 2 swipes, and 1 chaos. When I look at the barbarian's board, there is nothing on his board that I can do with that dice combination. I need 3 for the smackdown, 3 swipes for the smackdown. I need at least 3 vortexes here. I need 2 vortexes and 2 chaos dices there, 3 swipes and a chaos dice. Yeah, I don't have a small straight because I need the 3. I don't have a large straight. I can't do anything with that dice roll. So what happens is the barbarian would use 1 of their king's hand dice. The king's hand, you'll see on this setup, says I have to roll a 4, 5, or a 6. If I roll a 4, 5, or a 6, which I did, I rolled a 4. The fallen barbarian gets to take his turn all over again. We would do whatever cleanup we might have to do. Then we would start a new turn, and we would start with the upkeep, which if he had any status effects, he would take damage from. Then we would do the income, so we would get another income of 3. We'd draw a new card. This card says that I'm looking for, so the players would get the 2 health out of that card, and the roll objective is 3 swipes and a chaos dice. So I would go through and do that, and basically because I couldn't do anything that last turn, he gets a free retry with the king's hand. On his turn, he can't use any more than 1 of these. So if he couldn't do anything this time, then he can't use a second one because he already used the first one. So if we rolled, trying to roll for the 2 slashes and a chaos dice, three slashes and a chaos dice. I got the 3 slashes and a chaos dice. So what can I do with that? Well, I can do an attack. But let's just say he couldn't do an attack. Well, then he wouldn't be able to use the king's hand token again because he already used it once in this turn of his. The other thing the king's hand tokens will do is, if let's just say as the gunslinger, I got extremely lucky and I rolled all 6s. Now I have my ultimate for the gunslinger ready to go. The fallen barbarian isn't going to take that, so they'll spend their 1 king's hand token. Again, they have to roll a 4, 5, or a 6. Because the fallen barbarian rolled a 5 and the king's hand token was successful on my ultimate, the gunslinger has to roll 1 dice. He rolled another 6. So he still gets to do the ultimate against the fallen barbarian. Or let's just say I rolled a 4. Well, if I have enough combat points, I could play like 6 it and change this to a 6, even though we're still in the roll phase. This is a dice that happens during the roll phase. So I could spend the 1 combat point, 6 that 4 back, change that 4 back to a 6, and I still have my ultimate. Those kind of things that you can do on the normal game still happen here, even though we're now fighting a boss. You can still do those kind of things. You can manipulate your dice any way you can. So, and now the ultimate would still go through and hit the fallen barbarian for the 10 damage, plus I would roll for my reload and I would be able to get 2 more damage in there. So I would do 12 damage to the Fallen Barbarian. Because it's my ultimate, it's unblockable, undefendable, sorry. It's undefendable, so the Fallen Barbarian wouldn't be able to roll their defense, right? Normal rules apply. So I think I've covered all the scenarios that we could run across. So have fun, play back and forth, and hopefully you'll roll sixes and be able to beat the Fallen Barbarian. After the fight is concluded with the Fallen Barbarian, either you've won or you've lost. You have the same thing on this card that would say on a defeat, you do this, on a success, you do that. So the boss fights work a little different in the loot phase after the conclusion than the portal crawls. You haven't been tucking cards underneath your player board, and we don't create a shop. What we do is, following the directions on here, we would take a different side of the loot card. So the loot card is now that side that says boss on it. We would roll our loot die for one chest if we lost. I rolled an 18, and based on the loot card, the boss loot card, an 18 would give me a rare card. So I would draw a rare, and this rare would just go straight into my deck. I would just put it straight into the Gunslinger's deck. The Barbarian would get to roll their loot dice and also get a card for a unsuccessful try. Then we would get 2 more salve in the scoring sheet, and we would have to fight him again. If we were successful, you can see that we would roll that 3 times. So we would roll for loot cards 3 different times, each of us getting 3 loot cards. Then we would record our score on the score sheet and move on to the next portal crawl. Now, in case if I got something that I didn't want, then what I would do is, oh, I got something I didn't really want. I have no use for this. It doesn't go with my play style, whatever. You could turn the card back in. Instead of taking it, you could put it back in the box, and you would give yourself 1 more point. We did this at a normal difficulty of 20. So if I turn the card back in, we'd get 21 points on the scorecard. You still have the same limit. Your deck can't get past 50. And that's the boss fight and its loot at the end of the boss fight. So final thoughts for the boss fights. The boss fights I kind of like because it feels like you're playing another person that's just higher powered. All the way the boss interacts and boss works is the same as what it would be if you were playing 1v1 against somebody else. But now I've got a couple of people that I'm teaming up against the boss. That common health pool, in the beginning, it sounds like that might be a problem. But if you have a character like the Barbarian, which I was playing with, that has a way to heal themselves, they'll heal that common health pool. So you're getting healing from the Barbarian that's healing the common health pool. And you're getting like the DPS out of the Gunslinger, which, I consider the Gunslinger almost a glass cannon, if you know what that means, where they're high DPS, but they don't have a lot of defense abilities. That evasion, with you having to roll a 1 or a 2 to evade, it's a little difficult. If you get the roll right, you evade everything, so that's awesome. But normally, you don't seem to get, at least I don't seem to get that very often. But the Gunslinger can put out a lot of damage. It's just, when I play the Gunslinger PvP, I'm trying to whittle my opponent down faster than they're whittling me down. Where in here, especially like in the boss fight, you have to be able to balance that and keep your health up some. So those are strategies that you have to have in the boss fight. You should think about that before you go and pull your characters and decide which characters you're going to play. If you're playing with multiple people, it's a good idea to have somebody heal other characters and heal themselves and things like that. Okay, so this was the final video for the Dice Thrones Adventures. I'm going to do another final thoughts or review kind of a thing in another video because these got so long. So if you're looking for the build quality and what my ranking is and all that kind of stuff, I'm going to put that in that other video. So as always, this is my opinions. Nobody paid me for this. I bought all these games. These games happen to have been Kickstarters. So like I've said before, you may see some things here that when you get to retail, you don't see those things. Mostly for this one, I think it's promo cards. With that said, I hope you have fun playing this and any other game you want to play. As always, I would appreciate it if you liked this video and subscribed to my channel. And I'll see you next time. Thanks.